Imagine waking up one day to find that a certain type of asset you own is now illegal. The government demands you turn it over, or you'll face severe penalties, heavy fines, even prison time. It sounds like something out of a dystopian novel, right? But what if I told you this actually happened in the United States? And the asset in question wasn't some illicit substance, but gold. This is the story of Executive Order 6102, one of the most controversial and misunderstood economic policies in American history. To truly understand why this happened, we have to go back in time. To the early 1930s, the world was in the grips of the Great Depression. In the United States, unemployment had skyrocketed to nearly 25%. Banks were failing by the thousands, wiping out the life savings of ordinary people. The stock market had crashed, and a dark cloud of fear and uncertainty hung over the nation. People were terrified. And when people are scared, they look for safety. Back then, the US dollar was on the gold standard. This meant that every dollar in circulation was backed by a specific amount of physical gold held by the government. You could, in theory, walk into a bank and exchange your paper dollars for gold coins. As the economic crisis deepened, that's exactly what people started doing. So they lost faith in banks and in paper money. They wanted something tangible, something real. They started hoarding gold. This created a massive problem for the newly elected president, Franklin D. Roosevelt. He took office in March 1933, facing a full-blown banking crisis. The hoarding of gold was making a bad situation even worse. It was draining the gold reserves of the Federal Reserve, which was the central bank of the United States. Without enough gold, the Fed couldn't expand the money supply. Think of it like a car running out of gas. The economy was sputtering, and the Fed couldn't inject the fuel money needed to get it moving again. Roosevelt and his advisors believed that to fight the depression, they needed to devalue the dollar. By making the dollar worth less, American goods would become cheaper on the world market, which could boost exports and create jobs. A weaker dollar would also make it easier for people and businesses to pay off their debts. But they could undevalue the dollar as long as it was rigidly tied to gold at a fixed price. They couldn't break that tie while everyone was pulling gold out of the system. So on April 5, 1933, just a month after his inauguration, FDR issued Executive Order 6102. The order declared a national emergency and made it illegal for any person, partnership, association, or corporation to hoard gold coin, gold bullion, and gold certificates within the continental United States. Americans were required to deliver almost all of their gold to the Federal Reserve by May 1, 1933. In exchange, they would receive paper money at the then official rate of $20.67 per troy ounce. There were some exceptions. You could keep a small amount, up to $100 worth of gold coins, which is about 5 ounces. Dentists, artists, and jewelers could hold what was considered a reasonable amount for their professional needs. But for the average citizen who had been saving gold as a safety net, the order was a direct command. Turn it in, or you're a criminal. The penalty for non-compliance was steep, a fine of up to $10,000, which is over $200,000 in today's money. 10 years in prison, or both. The government's justification was that hoarding gold was stalling the economy, and that this extreme measure was necessary for the public good. The language of the order framed it as a patriotic duty. By turning in their gold, citizens were helping the nation combat the Great Depression. The media at the time largely supported the president's actions, portraying gold hoarders as selfish and unpatriotic speculators who were profiting from the country's misery. So, what happened? Did people comply? For the most part, yes. The threat of severe punishment, combined with the patriotic appeals, was effective. People lined up at banks to turn in their family heirlooms, their gold coins, and their savings. The government successfully collected a massive amount of privately held gold. But it's also true that many people did not comply. Some simply didn't trust the government. They buried their gold in their backyards, hid it in walls, or smuggled it out of the country. For decades after, stories would pop up about people finding stashes of pre-1933 gold coins hidden away. Once the government had consolidated the nation's gold, it made its next move. In January 1934, Congress passed the Gold Reserve Act. This act officially took the United States off the domestic gold standard, though it remained for international transactions. Most importantly, it gave the president the power to revalue the dollar. and FDR did just that. He immediately raised the official price of gold from $20.67 to $35 an ounce. Let's break down what this meant. If you were a law-abiding citizen who turned in your gold, you received $20.67 for each ounce. A few months later, the government declared that same ounce of gold was now worth $35. In essence, the government had made a profit of nearly 70% on the gold it had just confiscated from its own citizens. This devaluation of the dollar had a massive impact. It instantly increased the value of the gold held by the Federal Reserve, allowing it to print more money and inject that desperately needed liquidity into the banking system. It was a key part of Roosevelt's strategy to reflate the economy. Did it work? Well, it's one of the most debated questions in economic history. Many economists argue that devaluing the dollar was a crucial step in pulling the U.S. out of the Great Depression. It helped stop the deflationary spiral and set the stage for recovery. But others are highly critical. They see Executive Order 6102 as a massive overreach of government power, a form of legalized theft that violated property rights. They argue that it set a dangerous precedent. The legal challenges to the order were largely unsuccessful. One famous case, Perry v. United States, went all the way to the Supreme Court. The court found that the government had acted unconstitutionally in invalidating its own promise to pay its bonds in gold. But it also ruled that the plaintiff couldn't show any actual financial damages because of other parts of the new monetary policy, so he couldn't get his gold back. It was a confusing and controversial ruling. For the next 4 decades, it remained illegal for Americans to own gold bullion. This ban was finally lifted in 1974 by President Gerald Ford. Why? By the early 1970s, the global financial system was changing. The fixed exchange rates of the Bretton Woods system were collapsing. And in 1971, President Nixon officially severed the final link between the US dollar and gold. With the gold standard gone, there was no longer any real reason to prohibit private gold ownership. The story of Executive Order 6102 is a fascinating and often overlooked chapter in American history. It touches on so many important themes: the power of the government in a crisis, the conflict between individual rights and the collective good, and the very nature of money itself. It forces us to ask tough questions. When does a national emergency justify suspending fundamental rights? How much power should a government have over its citizens' property? Today, when we think about our investments and savings, the story of 1933 serves as a powerful reminder. It shows that rules can change. What is considered a safe and legal asset one day can become a liability the next. It's a lesson in the importance of understanding the historical context behind our financial systems, and being aware of the potential for even the most stable-seeming governments to take drastic actions in times of crisis. It's not about being paranoid. It's about being informed. The story of gold confiscation isn't just a historical curiosity. It's a cautionary tale that still resonates today. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the events that shaped our world. Let me know in the comments what you think. Was FDR a hero for saving the economy, or a villain for confiscating private property? I'd love to hear your thoughts. See you in the next video.